All right, episode 17 of Shaman Talk with Tegan. We're going to talk today about the drama triangle. So this is not exclusive to shamanism, this concept, but it is part, at least, of my training that I learned about. The first half almost of my training was spent, understanding yourself at a deeper level and really coming to terms with the things that have been passed down to you, maybe ancestrally or from past lives, the things that are holding us back, the traumas, the things we're not willing to confront or face. And you have to do it in order to complete the training. So it's very intense. And again, it's nothing that you can only use in shamanism. I'm putting this forth on my shaman page because for anyone who wants to keep healing or wants to initiate the healing process, this is one of the first steps, I feel like, or towards the beginning of what you should really think about. So let's just get into it, and I'll talk a little bit more broadly about it in a minute. So we got the triangle, right? 3 main points of the drama triangle. They are the perpetrator, the rescuer, and the victim. So it's hard to admit to ourselves when we have flaws, right? A lot of people don't want to truly look into themselves and be like, where am I on this triangle? Now, is it fair to say everyone is involved in this triangle? Of course not. But a lot of us are. And at first I was like, well, I'm not part of this. But then once you get deeper and deeper into yourself and into what this means, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I am stuck on this triangle. And people just go from bink, bink, bink. They go bink, bink, bink all around the triangle. Because a lot of people go between being the perpetrator and the victim, or being the victim and the rescuer. For me, from what I have personally seen and dealt with so far, the rescuer part is the hardest to admit and the hardest to understand, that some of us, that's our role we play. And we think we're doing something good, but really we're just perpetuating the cycle. So we're going to talk a little bit deeper about each one. So let's talk about the perpetrator first. This one's kind of the easiest to see, especially in others. There's people who feel that they have the right to push your boundaries, or they think differently than you, so they're just going to try and force you to do things their way. They're right, they're never wrong, things of that nature. Now, of course, if that's us, we're not going to admit it, right? Kind of the viewpoint of the perpetrator is that you're not wrong, you're not in the wrong. But if you are someone who can understand that maybe you are the perpetrator, and that we all have been the perpetrator at some point, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to step back and, like I always say, start to heal. And if you can do that, that's a good thing. I genuinely congratulate you, because that's hard. That's hard to admit that in certain circumstances, you might be the problem. So if you can recognize those things and start to be even just contemplating that, it brings it from the subconscious to the consciousness, right? And then we can change if we want to. Obviously, if you have no problem being the perpetrator, then okay, I guess keep going. But I would strongly encourage you to look inside and see why you do that. Because no one likes their boundaries pushed, right? We don't like when people try and tell us how we should be living our lives, or trying to tell us that we're wrong for thinking differently. And we see this a lot in the mass media or on social media. If you have posted something on social media before that's if you think this way, you're part of the problem, or if you don't do this, then you're wrong, or anything like that, no matter what the subject is, that is being a perpetrator. And I don't say that to shame people or make you feel bad. It just is what it is. The whole you're part of the problem, or if you don't think this way, then you're a terrible person. That's not the case. We all need to step back, because even just saying those things, even if you're coming from a place of trying to help people, ultimately, trying to stand up for people, that's still purely your ego. So really think about it, and think about if you're the perpetrator. And like I said, no one is just one usually. Usually we go through this cycle. And like I said in the beginning, not everyone is stuck in this cycle. Some people break free of the cycle, and it's very freeing. And it's I can't believe I used to do this, you know? So let's move on to the next one. We have the rescuer. Now, this one can be the hardest, I think, to think about and for people to recognize, because the rescuer, even if they're trying to come from a place of good, it's still not altruistic. It's still from your ego. It's like, oh, these poor people, let me help, or this poor person needs me because I'm the only one who can help them, or I'm the only one who's telling them the truth. And really, that's just you, your ego, trying to feed into itself, like, oh, like, I know what to do. I'm going to lend a helping hand because I am better, or I know better. So let me try and force someone to see things my way. Okay, so if you kind of some green flags or red flags or whatever color flags, if something's going on in your head right now, like, well, I kind of do that sometimes. Well, think about why you do that and maybe try and stop. In these things, that once you start thinking about it, once you can admit to yourself that you might be part of the problem sometimes, that's when it's like, oh, wait a minute, how long have I been doing that? Or it's the reverse. How long has my friend been doing that to me? And it's like, hold on, everyone, take a step back. So if you're someone, or you know someone that's always like, you know, if you're someone who's like, oh, if only they would have listened to me, like, oh, if only they would have done what I said, this wouldn't be happening, or I'm the only one that can calm this person down, you know, that's still not altruistic. It's still part of the drama triangle because it's still coming from the ego. Okay, so that's a hard one to think about and admit, and I get it. Like I said, when I had this realization when I first started learning about this in my shamanic training, when you do that deep dive into who you are right now, you know, it can be really like a slap in the face, honestly. But in order to be better, be the best versions of ourselves, then we have to do this work. You know, even when I try and tell people about illuminations, I'll mention like, hey, you're going to have to dig into this emotion that you're feeling, the anger or the sadness. You're going to have to go in and feel it so I can clear it. And some people are like, oh, wait a minute. Like, huh? I don't want to feel that. But in order to release it, you have to. So this is just some of that work. And of course, some of you might listen and be like, I don't want to get better. I don't want to grow. I don't want to change. I am who I am. And then that's fine. This is just, I'm just throwing all this stuff out there. If anybody picks it up and uses it and is better for it, then great. Okay, let's move on to the third part of the triangle, the victim. This one is probably the easiest to understand and to recognize. Maybe not for some people. Maybe you don't want to admit that you're the victim. So on a personal level, this was me. This is where I stood in the triangle most of the time. Like I said, we bop around no matter who you are if you're stuck in this triangle. I had the mentality oftentimes, not always, but a lot, of being like, ugh, you know, woe is me. Why is life doing this to me? Why is nobody, you know, texting me back? Why does the world hate me? You know what I mean? And I wasn't always that, you know, maybe dramatic about it, but it was those feelings of like, why is it always me? Why do I always get stuck with this? Or why does this never happen for me? And that's just playing the victim, especially in my case, for basically no reason. It was just getting stuck in this rut of like, well, life sucks and it sucks for me all the time and that just is what it is. But it isn't what it is, you know what I mean? Once you can break free of this cycle, then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Sure, some things in life happen that aren't always exciting or aren't always positive in the moment. But I truly believe that no matter what the situation, there's always something to be gained from it. It might take a year, it might take a lifetime to understand what that was supposed to help you with. But it's there. It always is. You just have to learn to look for it. You know, and if we're constantly in the state of victimhood, then it's hard to see the positive things in negative experiences. And I think that this is also a huge problem that I see just in general, again, going back to like social media or like talking about certain things with people. It's like we get stuck in this constant victimhood of like, oh no, even when we talk about things like mental health. And of course, like I always say in all my videos, I am not saying, you know, this isn't a problem or that you shouldn't see a doctor or be on pills. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we have these labels placed on us. Like, I'm bipolar, and that's it. I'm just doomed. It is what I have to be on pills. I have to do this. I have to be this way. And then it's like you're taking maybe an issue and making it worse, and where you're just compiling it. And we do that not just with our mental health, but with other things where it's like anxiety. I talked about that in my last video about fear, and understanding the fact that a lot of anxiety stems from just fear of, the future, fear of having to relive the past. If we were more focused on the moment, there's nothing to fear like that. But again, it's things like anxiety keep us in this state of victimhood of like, oh, poor me, I can't do anything, I have anxiety. And it's like, help yourself. I know that sounds very maybe forward and flippant, but I don't mean it that way. But it's like, we have more power than we think. We have the more brain capacity than we give ourselves credit for. And that happens all the time. And it's okay to need help sometimes from others, taking medication, seeing a therapist, doing all these things, but we need to remember to take care of our spiritual and energetic part of ourselves. That's a part that a lot of people do not take care of, and that's why, part of the reason why we're having to be medicated all the time. We're having to constantly see therapists because we're ignoring a whole half of our being. Probably even more than that, I would say. Energetically and spiritually is truly who you are. You're not your traumas. You're not your wounds. You are a being of light who has come here, and sure, shit happens that we hold on to that we need to try and let go of. So, really think about it and see if you are in any part of that triangle. And so, one thing I do want to mention about the victimhood, it's just so almost easy to play the victim, right? We want to blame others for our shortcomings and for the negative things that happen to us. But really, it's time to be more self-actualized. Take responsibility for your thoughts, for your actions, and understanding that sometimes shit happens, right? We just got to be able to move on from it. And like I said, that's I'm just making a 15-20 minute video about this, but there's ways to help yourself. We don't need to be constantly victimized and feeling down and feel like we're helpless. I think that's the worst part, is in that victim stage, we feel like we're helpless and we need others to help us. And we can't possibly do anything to help ourselves. And that's just not the case at all. Again, needing help once in a while or along the way, yes, of course, that's what I do with tarot and with illuminations and soul retrievals. But ultimately, it's recognizing that you have the power to get out of the triangle. You don't have to be the victim anymore. You don't have to be the rescuer, or don't be the perpetrator. All those things just signal healing that needs to be done. So if you're in the triangle, or you know someone who's in the triangle, it's time to recognize what's going on, right? Now, if you feel like, let's say you recognize, sometimes this happens with like grandparents a lot, where, you have your child and then the grandparents try to make their own rules. Like, oh, we can come see them whenever we want. We're just going to show up and come over. So if you recognize like, oh, perpetrator, the hard part here is if you recognize in someone else in your life being the perpetrator or constantly trying to be the rescuer or the victim, it's going about these things in a certain way. So that's what I try and do as well. It's like not placing judgment on people who do that, because it's for a reason, right? Like I said, we all have our traumas and reasons that we are this way. But it's kind of being like, oh, wait a minute, how do I help myself in this situation and not worry about the other person? So let's say there's that perpetrator. The grandparents think they can make their own rules when it comes to your children, and it's about not yelling at them or telling them off or saying that they're perpetrators or whatever, but it's about, okay, how do I set stronger boundaries, or how do I not become the victim of this? Focus on you, not on them, okay? Or if it's the opposite and you're like, ooh, that's me, like I'm always the victim, don't shame yourself and don't blame yourself. It's amazing that you can recognize that. And then it's just figuring out the steps on how to stop doing that, right? And as I say in a lot of my videos, if you're unsure, of course, look for help in anywhere that you can, right? Even if it's just like, oh, my best friend listens to me without judgment, I'm going to talk to her. Or if it's a therapist, or if whatever it is, you want to message me and ask me questions, go for it. All of this is ultimately to just be a better person. And I just want to say too, when I say things like that, to be a better version of ourselves, that's what it is. I'm not saying anyone out there who's in this triangle or any of the other videos that I've made, you're living in fear, whatever it is. I'm not saying it to make you feel bad. I'm not saying that it's wrong or that you're a bad person. You truly should learn to love yourself at every step of the way, right? That self-love that a lot of people talk about, you should try and have it there always. But just because you have that there doesn't mean you can't be a better version of yourself, right? Like, even though I am a shaman, I'm a practicing shaman, I've done so much work when it comes to this life and my past lives, but I still recognize that there's certain things in me. I still have certain things that set me off. I'm healed enough now that I don't let it project onto other people or any people around or anything around me, but there's still certain things someone might say or I might see where I instantly am like annoyed, and then I'm like, oh, darn it. Then I know I have to go soon and deep dive into why that is and what's triggering me and things like that. So I can say I'm officially out of the triangle. That doesn't make me special. It just means that I did the work, and it can be hard. You're going to have to cry it out at some point probably, because it's like, oh my God, I've been living life as a victim, or I've been the rescuer, and I guess I'm really not helping anybody by doing that. If you're a rescuer and you lend help or lend guidance, it has to come from a place of non-ego. So if you're trying to help someone and they don't want your help, you don't force them to do it, or you don't badger them until they give in or whatever it is. Or when something goes wrong, doing them, well, I told you so. I think deep down we all know that that's not the best thing to do, but we can't help ourselves sometimes. And I get it. Like, sometimes it's just because we care about someone so much that we're like, can't you see you're doing the wrong thing? I've been there before my training, before my healing. That's what I was. I was always like, because I could always read people's energies and the situations, and I'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? Listen to me. But ultimately, people have to make their own decisions and live their own lives. So if you offer guidance and help and no one takes it, you can't get mad. That I've been there, done that, done readings and illuminations where I give people advice, they don't take it, and then they're like, well, how come it didn't work? And I'm like, well, did you actually do what I said? Because sometimes people don't want to hear what I actually have to say, right? I'll give them a reading, they ask a question, like, should I get back together with my ex type of thing? And I'm like, no. But they wanted to hear yes, so in some way they're going to tell themselves, she said yes. Anyways, getting past the point of what I wanted to make. Okay, just basically, this is a stepping stone to becoming more self-aware. Take time. This is a big thing too. Take the time to think. Get off your phone. Stop talking to people. Don't turn on the TV. Sit and think. If it's in your room by yourself, if it's out in nature, if you're just sitting in your driveway, I'm that neighbor. I'm that weirdo that just stands outside in the front yard just staring at the sky for like 20 minutes, not moving. Probably freak people out, but it's a way of meditating. It's a way of centering yourself and hearing your own thoughts, which for some people I know it's like, oh, scary. I don't want to hear my own thoughts, but you have to. Well, I take that back. You don't have to do anything, but if you want to be the best version of yourself and just live in a lighter way, that's what you got to do. And I think we just have so many distractions these days that we can't recognize these things sometimes. So I challenge you, take some time, even if it's 10 minutes. Don't look at your phone. Don't turn on the TV. Don't engage with anybody at all. If you have to literally go in the bathroom or lock yourself in a closet, do it. You can have a light on. You don't have to sit in the dark, or you can if that helps you focus. And it might not be about this victim triangle I'm talking about. Maybe you recognize like, oh, I haven't taken the chances that I wanted to or reached out to the people I wanted to because I live in fear. Or maybe it's just a realization of like, I cannot focus and I cannot get my thoughts together. I need help. And then you seek out help, and that's great too. My point is, in order to get out of things like the drama triangle or living in constant fear or whatever it is, we have to try and become self-aware, self-actualized, recognize our own thoughts and feelings and actions before they could become actions, right? You know, because we talk about triggers a lot, and if you have a trigger and you just yell at people or get physical or whatever it is, like, it's too late then, at least in that moment, right? It's never too late to help yourself and heal yourself, but like once the trigger's out and it's out physically or, you know, verbally, then it's like, crap. We got to learn to first recognize these triggers, then to stop ourselves, right? Like, no, don't yell at other people because of my issues. And then we go from there, and then eventually you heal yourself enough that it's not even in your subconscious. It's not even a trigger anymore. Okay, stopping myself there. We're getting away from the victim triangle again. So just to recap, perpetrator, rescuer, victim. Those are the 3 points of the victim triangle. If you can, take some time. And like I said, some of you might not be in this triangle, and that's great. That's amazing. But some of you might be like, uh-oh. But that's good. Step 1's recognizing it, right? Step 2, it depends on who you are and which point that you're most comfortable in, right? Like I said, all of us at some point have been to each point, but, you know, a lot of us kind of stay at one point. Okay, so yay, self-actualization. It can be intense, it can be hard, it doesn't happen in a day, it doesn't happen in a year, sometimes it takes a lifetime, but that's what you're trying to do along with having fun, right? So we do the hardcore healing, the intense stuff that makes us maybe feel bad or cry or whatever, but then it releases and we feel so much better. Then we also always take time to enjoy life and what it has to offer. So as always, if you have any questions or you want to do any kind of energetic work with me, I do a lot of distanced healing and things like that. Feel free to reach out. I have my email up on this page. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. My handle there is Tarot with Tegan. So feel free to message me there as well. Or if you, like I said, if you have any questions on any of the videos, if you watched other ones and just need someone to talk to or just have questions, just let me know and I will get back to you.